These are for I'm a 13 choice. These are 20.
Okay, Daf Nun Daled. We're starting the seventh parak. And again, the subject is still talking about when someone says something, what does he mean? Here the question is about yarok. Somebody said that he's making a neder not to eat yarok, which usually means vegetables. And the question, and the greens, so it literally might be greens. And the question is, does it include other things? And the first question it talks about is the luin. Luin is pumpkin. When you call pumpkin a vegetable. It could be the word vegetable is not accurate, maybe, but in general, that's going to be the question. Maybe greens, but I guess greens by us would mean dafka, would not include a pumpkin. But that's the most question over here. When someone said, I'm making an neder not to eat yarok, what's the thing about luin? Does that include pumpkin or not? Mutabit luin.
Pumpkin is a vegetable?
So that's the question. I mean, I don't know scientifically or botanical and then the colloquial, how people talk. And the question is how people talk. When people say yarok, yarakot, did they include the luin? And nowadays probably they do. When they say yarakot, you go to a vegetable store. I don't think it's called a fruit. It's probably called a vegetable. Okay, so it depends on the time and place. Here the Mishnah is discussing when someone says yarok, does it include the luin? Mutabit the luin or kiva osir machlokis. And now there's going to be a lomdish of machlokis over here. It's not sastam that Tanakam went on the street and Rabbi Kiva went on the street to hear different people. But there's a machlokas going on. Don't we see people when they'll send somebody to go to the market to get him vegetables, and the shliach comes back and he says there are no vegetables, only pumpkin. So doesn't that mean that it's included? No, I'm sorry, the other way. Doesn't that mean it's not included? Because if it would have been included, so then he would have bought it. Why do you have to go back and ask for it? So the Rabbanan want to prove from that it's not included. So Rabbi Kiva said, yes, that's exactly true. And that's the reason why I say that it is included. Oh, Shema Omer does he come back to the sender and say, there are no vegetables, only legumes? Would you like that? No, he doesn't. He won't even come back to ask him because I said vegetables. What does that have to do with legumes? But here that he does come back and ask, if it's pumpkin, would you like pumpkin? That means that it is semi-included. You see that pumpkin is included in the word yerek, at least enough that he should have to ask. It's true, he wouldn't buy it without asking, but he would ask. But kidneys, he wouldn't ask at all because it's not at all. So here you do have a machlokes. It's not stam that they're arguing what people say or different places. No, there is something in between that it's not mamish a vegetable, but it is enough that he would ask. Tanakama says that since it's not mamish a vegetable and he wouldn't buy it lachatchila, when he says buy vegetables, it doesn't include the luin, but it's enough that he asks about that. Rabbi Kiva says that's also enough to be included, so that's what Rabbi Kiva says. Everybody agrees. That's another issue over here. How about Pola Mitzri? Pola Mitzri, I think that they translate as haricot beans, some kind of string beans. And here's the difference if it's dried or fresh, moist. And it says Pola Mitzri, Asav Pola Mitzri, Lach, as far as Pola Mitzri, it does. When you say Yerokos, does it include this kind of bean? So it says that when it's lach, when it's still moist and fresh, so then it is included in your yerok. Once it's dried out, then it's called a bean maybe, and it's not the bean. The dry beans are not called any more vegetable. Again, it has to do with a lashon and the other. It could be that nowadays is different, but probably nowadays also, I imagine the beans are not included in vegetables. We also include them in legumes and kidneys. Here it says a difference in the different stages when it's before it's dried out, after it's dried out. So first, the Gemara is surprised at anybody that the luin is included in yarek. It could be that the word yarek might mean something like greens or whatever, and they say in our language it would be something that you would eat raw. And since the luin has to be cooked, the Gemara is surprised at all that it's included. Min yarek, no doubt. How could you say that? And how could anybody talk about it if it includes luin? He said yarek, and yarek surely doesn't include that. That he said not only yarek. Yarek alone would mean that he eats something which is eaten raw. But he said yarek kedera, which means pot vegetables. That means that you do cook them. So if he cook the vegetables that you cook, maybe that includes the luin or not. But the Gemara still says no. But just because you said yarek kedera doesn't mean necessarily that it's cooked in the pot. It might mean that it's food. It's kind of yarokas that are eaten together with foods that are cooked in the pot, like things that go together with meat or something like that. That's something that you cook in the pot. You'll also put the vegetables together with them. But you still don't see that it means that it's kind of vegetables that you cook. The answer is, that he said that I'm answering on myself he said beferish, not stay mirokas. Stay mirokas, the Gemara's mashma that it would not include the gluin for sure because it's not eaten raw. But he said, Yera kamas bashal b'gdera, that he's made a lie. I'm answering myself from vegetable that is cooked in the pot. So now the question is, does that include pumpkins or not? End of the first sugya, and one of the Gemara explained that the Mishnah only has a question when it's Yera kamas bashal b'gdera. Allah. Then when not a Gemara goes to the machlokes, which really the Mishnah explained itself, but the Gemara explains further. The Makim if what's machlokes between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbanan if the lun is included, if pumpkin is included in vegetables. Rabbanan sabri kol milza the tzarach shliach alam luche yala lav minahu. Anything that the shliach has to ask, is that included? That means you told me that why vegetables, is this also good enough? Since he has to ask, that's not included. That's not included in the term that the sender had used. If it's enough that he should at least ask, he has a hamamina, maybe that he wants it also, that's enough that he should be included. It should be included, and therefore if he has it himself on Yeroko, since the shliach would go back and say there is blue and is that acceptable, so it's enough considered it's min. Amar Abaye, Moder Rabbi Akiva le'ni malkish en aloka. That even Rabbi Akiva that says that it is usher, it doesn't mean it's chayiv malchus. So which means if it will be a vadai, so then he'll be chayiv malchus. He was over his nether if he eats this pumpkin. But Rabbi Akiva is also masking that it's not malchus. It's only machmir mesafik. That if since he does have to ask, the Rabbanan say since you have to ask, so it's not included. Rabbi Akiva says since at least it's a question, it's enough reason to be usher. But he also doesn't say for sure. He's machmir mesafik that he should be choshish that it's included, but he wouldn't say it's chayiv malchus. The Gemara is going to still come back to our Mishnah, but it brings a Mishnah, and then it's going to talk about if it fits with our Mishnah or not. It's not Nasam, a Mishnah over there, Mila, Meila, the subject of Meila, something which is hektish, and somebody benefited from it. So he's Chayiv Mila, Korban Mila, Omish. It says in the Mishnah, Ashliach Rasha Shlichuso, Balabais Moal, Lo Asla Shlichuso, Shliach Moal. Usually, in the whole Torah, we say, Ein Shliach Devar Avera. If someone sends somebody to do an Avera, so you don't look at the Meshalech, it's not considered the mission of the one who did it. You don't say Shluch Shaladim Kamoso by an Avera. But by Me'ilah, there's a Chiddush that you do say. If someone sent a Shliach to do something, and he did it b'shogig, nobody knew, so the Shliach is small. The Shliach is the one who's small and not Balabayis. But that's only if he did what he's supposed to do. He was a good messenger. But if he didn't do what the Balabayis told him to, so then he's on his own, and then he would be more. That's the klal. If the shliach did what he's supposed to, so then the shliach is not the one who did the avera. The balabais is the one who did the avera. That's the chiddush Allah. That's already a chiddush because usually ain't shliach with avera, but by meila there is. But that's only if he did his shlichus. But lo asa shlichusa shliach mal. If he didn't do what he was supposed to do, so then the shliach is the one who did the avera. Not the question. No one knew that that's an avera. They all thought they didn't realize that this is hektish. But the question is he the shliach of the Mashaleach or not? If he did what he's supposed to, then it's the Mashaleach's responsibility. If he didn't do what the Mashaleach told him to do, he's on his own, and he's going to be the one who's Chayiv Mila. Mantana, who's the author of the Tana over there, that continues and says an example of the shliach not doing what he was told. The Man Tana, Amrav Chizda Masis and Rabbi Akiva. The mission over there that we'll see right away. So far, the mission that it brought, everybody agrees. So that's the klal of Mila. Asr shlichusa, lo asr shlichusa. But the Mishnah continues, the Tanan, and this Mishnah that it continues as an example of not listening to the Balabayas, is going to be touching on our Mishnah. The Mishnah over there does not fit the Rabbi Akiva. What does it say over there? The Tanan. What's the case of the Shliach not doing what the Balabayas told him? The Balabayas told the Shliach, told his waiter, the Shliach, he told him give meat to the guests. And he gave them liver. Is that the Balabais tell him to give him liver? He said meat, or the opposite, the second case for sure. He told him give liver, and he gave meat. Meat is surely not liver. Liver does not mean all meat. So shliach mal. That's the case that the shliach did not listen to the Balabais, and therefore, if it comes out that this meat kaved was hektish, so the shliach is the one who's responsible because he didn't listen to the instructions. Is that not listening to the instructions? That's what the words are talking about now. Does meat not include kaved? Liver is something I think that more compares it to the case of our Mishnah, that if someone would say to a shliach, go to the market and get meat, and there only would be liver, would he come back? He would come back. He would come back to ask the Balabais that there's liver. They want liver. They have no other kinds of meat. They have liver. Is that good enough? So according to the Tanakh, that's not enough to be considered meat, and the same way say by neder, and therefore it's good that the shliach didn't do shlichus. So here, if the balabai said give meat and he gave liver, he didn't do what the balabai said. But according to Rabbi Akiva, it's enough considered the same type. The fact that he would come back and say there's no other meat, his liver is not good enough. Rabbi Akiva and our Mishnah said that makes it included in meat. So over here, if the balabais told him to give meat, then he gave liver, in the ratio at least. So Rabbi Akiva should say that the balabais is the mal because the shliach is doing what he was told. So therefore, limal balabais, below limal shliach. According to Rabbi Akiva, anything that's enough that you go back and ask, that's enough to be included, and therefore the balabais should be the one who's mal because the shliach did listen. He said give meat, and he gave meat. Liver is also meat enough that you would at least ask, is that considered, is that meat? Do you want that? So too, and Gabi Meila should also be a part. So Chisda said that the Mishnah and Meila does not fit the Rabbi Akiva, it only goes according to Rabbanan. Rabbi, no, it's not true. I feel the same Rabbi Akiva. The Mishnah over there fits Rabbi Akiva very well, because Meila Moder Rabbi Akiva the Tzarechem Luchei. Doesn't Rabbi Akiva agree that he has to ask? Means as far as Nedarim, we want to know if it's considered meat. The fact that the shliach would at least ask the sender if that's good enough, that's enough, that it should be considered included in the word meat. But we just finished saying that he has to ask the balabais that we usually, why is it called? It's enough it's enough, it's type that if there's no meat in the market, only liver, the shliach would go back, call up and ask, there's liver, do you want that? So now we're talking about, did he do the instruction? Was he a good shliach or not? As far as Mila, depends if he did his shlichus. He's not a good shliach because the balabai says, why didn't you ask me? I just told you to give meat to the guests, and you gave the liver. I didn't. He should have come and asked me. It's true. It's enough of a question to come back. I wouldn't have screamed like, "What are you asking me to give apples? I told you to give meat." But he comes back and he says, "There's no meat, or there is meat, but I want to give liver. Is that good enough?" Also, he should have come to ask me. The fact he didn't ask me, you're not called a shliach anymore. Beautiful teretz. That even though, as far as you want to know what's considered in the terminology, that is enough. The fact that you come to ask, yes, that's true. But the mice you have to come to ask. By Nedarim, there's nothing to ask. Nedarim is only coming to be magdir to define what's included in the term. But by Hilchas Mila, we want to know if he did a shlichus. He didn't do a shlichus because he didn't come back to ask if that's good enough to give to the guests. That was a bias teretz. Itmar Shemaita Kamei de Rava Amalahon Shapar Amanachmeni. This was said over to Rava. It means Rav Chisda first said it only goes according to Rabban, not according to Rabbi Akiva. And they said over to Rava that Abai says it even goes according to Rabbi Akiva because he at least has to ask permission, and he didn't. So he's not a good shliach. So Rava told to the people who told him that Abai said, well, Shapar Amar Nachmeni. Nachmeni is Abai's name. They talk about if his real name was Nachmeni and they called him Abai, maybe because they talk about Rabbi Bar Nachmeni. They say, I'm not sure if that's a Gemara, but very sure it's a pshat that Abai was a yasam. Abai was an orphan, and Rabbi was the one who raised him. And Rabbi's father was Nachmeni, Rabbi Bar Nachmeni, and Abai's name was Nachmeni. So maybe he didn't want to call him by his father's name, so he called him Abai, and he even has a ring about Abai, father. But the other way that maybe he called Abai Nachmeni because of his father's name. Different possibilities why Abai is called Nachmeni. But Lamaisa, his name is Nachmeni, and Rabbi said that Nachmeni said well. That Abai said well, that the mission over there goes even according to Rabbi Akiva because he didn't listen to instructions. And end of that Gemara. The Gemara continues. Third line. Man Tana de Palak Alei Rabbi Akiva. Who's our Tanakama? Means we have Rabbi Akiva says in our Mishnah, if it's enough reason to go back and ask the sender, is that good enough? You wanted Yerokos, is pumpkin good enough? The fact that it's included enough to be a question by Nedarim, it will be awesome. So and the Tanakama argues. Tanakama says no, since you can't buy it without asking, it's not enough to be included. So the Gemara wants to know what's the name of the Tanakama. In our Mishnah we have Tanakama. It doesn't say a name. And Rabbi Akiva, who's the Tanakama? The answer is Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. I have a brayso that's going to show that Rav Shimon ben Gamliel is the same as a Tanakama. That if you have something that's not so simple that it's included, that's not included. Even though it would make sense to go back and ask that you want to get this, that's not enough to be included. Brayso also about Nedarim. Somebody made a net. He's going to be also to eat meat. So what's included in meat? So the Brayso says, "Asa b'chol minei basar," all kinds of meat, means the different parts of an animal. Everything is asa. Asa b'rosh, b'raglayim, b'kana, b'kaved, b'lev. These are parts that are usually not so eaten. The head and the feet. That I saw also by the slaughterhouse right away. They cut off the head, And I don't know what they do with it, but then it's not the regular, that's not like, Harosh Vakrayim, like it says in the Pasuk always. The feet doesn't mean the whole foot, it means the bottom part of the foot that they cut off right away. And that's not the regular meat. I think they do make some kind of dishes out of that, calves legs and stuff like that. They make cha, I think, Hungarian dish. They probably do something with it, but it's not the regular meat. But here it says, Tanakama says that also is included in meat. The rosh, the kana, kaved, and the leg. These are the organs, the trachea, the liver, the heart. Yeah, by us, liver is pasha meat. But these are all organ meats. Is that included in the word meat? Tanakama says over here that they are included. They are included. It sounds like a bakiva. Over ophos, also chicken. He said meat. Does the word basa, does it meat? Does that include poultry? Does that include birds? So Tanakama says yes. All this sounds like Rabbi Akiva. It's enough that he would go back and ask. There's no meat. There's head. There's feet. There's the organ meats. Over ophos also. If there's no meat, he'll say there's no basar bakar. There's no cattle meat, but there is bird. There's chicken. So that since it's enough that he'd at least ask. So the term basar includes those things. Then he's mutter b'basar dagim v'chagav. But even according to this Tana, he's mutter to eat fish and grasshoppers. Those things are not included in the word meat. Meat might be enough to be considered chicken, let's say, but he wouldn't go back and say there's no meat. You want fish? Like he says, I didn't talk about fish at all. He said meat. No, meat and fish don't do with each other. Meat and chicken have more in common than meat and fish. Also, chagavim, we're not used to that nowadays. We don't eat chagavim ever, but there are kosher grasshoppers, but the word basar does not include that. Even though you're saying basar dagim, basar chagavim, you might if you explain it, but the word basar alone does not include these things. That's Tanakama, and it sounds very much like a Akiva. And here is Rav Shimon Gamliel, that he is going to be the opponent of Rav Akiva. So you see that he's going to be the Tanakama of our Mishnah. The fact that you have to ask, and it's not automatically included, so he would say that these other parts are not included. Rav Shimon
Grasshopper would be fleischiks?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, next year.
Rav Shimon Gamliel Omer, Hanotim and Basar, also B'chol Minei Basar. It's Rav Shimon does agree that all kinds of meat, the different kinds of meat of the animal are included, but Mutter B'rosh U'B'Raglaim U'B'Kana U'B'Kaved U'B'Lev U'B'Ophos means this whole list that the Tanakama doesn't say what his name was. Now we know he's Rav Akiva, but that we knew from our Mishnah. But how we see that Rav Shimon Gamliel is the opinion that argues in Rav Akiva and says that no, the head, the feet, the trachea, the liver, the heart, these things are not included. But to put it into our formula, you would not buy it right away. If someone would send you to buy meat, you wouldn't buy these things. You'd go back and you would ask him, is that good enough? That's something in between. And here it says that is mutter, that's not like our Tanakama, that's something that you have to ask, is not enough to be included in the nether. Also, ba'ophos, that's also, you wouldn't buy, if it says, get me meat, you come back with chicken, he says, you didn't even ask me. If you would have come to ask, it would have made sense, so since it's not automatically included, so it is mutter in chicken, of other birds or poultry, goes without saying. Rav Shimon Gamliel also said in another instance, he also said that the innards, the kerbayim, is the intestines of the animal, that's not considered meat, and somebody that eats it is not a mensch. Labar inish, he's not a mensch. And the Gemara explains what does it mean he says he's not a mensch. I didn't get the exact words over here. The idea the Gemara thinks that the way the Mefarshim explained is that when he says he's not a mensch, he's not saying he's not a mensch in the Cheres, but as far as Zvini, as far as businessman, if someone talks about meat and he buys kirbayim, he'll buy the intestines. So as far as business, he's not a businessman. He's not a mensch in business. He doesn't understand business. So when you say this, you don't mean that. Maybe there's a better shot. That's as far as I got on this line. But the main point is that we're saying that Rav Shimon Gamliel is the one who says that if it's not mamish included, you'd have to ask about it. That's not enough to be included in the nether. And we found out who the Tanakama of our Mishnah is. It's Rav Shimon Gamliel and against Rabbi Akiva. The Gemara wants to go back to the Agav. We mentioned the difference between fish and poultry. Tanakama. Even the Tanakama that says that, this is Rabbi Akiva, even though he says that ophos is included in meat, it's enough that you'd ask, but fish are not. Difference between fish and, let's call it chicken. But then why is the question? What's the dog nami of Sichad Ila Mashach Bisra Mimlach Alei Dama Ila Mashkachna Bisra? I see dogim. The Gemara does think that if someone sends a shliach to get meat and there's no meat and there's just fish, it is enough of a question to ask, should I get fish? There's no meat, you want fish instead. Okay, maybe it depends on the time and place. Maybe today also is like that. It's close enough that there is havamina. It's not for sure. You surely shouldn't buy fish if someone sent you to buy meat, and chicken also not. But is enough of a question. So the Gemara thinks they're both on the same level. That both of them you would ask. You would go back and call up and say there's no meat available. There's chicken, and there's even fish. They also be part of the question. That person could ask if there's fish. He would say maybe it's also good enough for you. It's also included basar dagim, the flesh of fish. Maybe also. So the Gemara doesn't understand Tanakama. That's Rabbi Akiva. That's something that you would ask is enough included that it should be considered in Rabbi Akiva. Again, Rabbi Akiva says yes. Rabbi Akiva says that if it's enough of a question at least, so it is included. So not only chicken, but fish also should be included. It's enough to be a question. Maybe you want fish. So Gemara says certain nechatim. So Amar Abaye ki gon shik dam. It's still not a case when the person who made the neder that he just let blood. He used to do that for health purposes. Now they let blood in order to donate blood. Probably the same as far as the person who's donating it. It's the same thing that after you let blood, you have to eat certain foods. Don't eat certain foods. So here the case was that he just let blood, and therefore everyone knows that it's not healthy to eat fish. So when he says meat, he surely didn't mean fish. And chicken, yes. But in a regular case, according to Akiva, fish also would be included in meat because people would ask, would ask back to the Mashalayach, there's no meat, there's only fish. That's also a viable question. But the Gemara says if he just finished being Mekes Dam, then he wouldn't eat chicken either. After Hakaz's Dam, you don't eat fish, you also don't eat poultry. Shmuel was a doctor. Shmuel said if somebody let blood and he ate the sar ophos, he ate the flesh of birds, then his heart is going to fly away like a bird. They would probably it's a rhyme or something like that, but it means that I don't think it means medically it has anything to do with flying away. But he says that it's not healthy to eat poultry after letting blood. The Tanya also, now the Brisa says like that, after a person let blood, he shouldn't eat fish or poultry or salted meat. The Tanya also, another one, once we brought it down, another Brisa, the Tanya hikis dam after a person let blood, again it says opos not. Here it says that after letting blood, it's not healthy to eat milk or cheese or eggs or shachlan. They translate as, I think I'm not sure, cress. I'm not sure what they translate shachlan as. And here it says again poultry and not salty meat. Anyway, it says a few places. Shmuel said, and we have two verses that say not to eat ophos, not to eat poultry after letting blood. So if in order to answer the kasha of fish, he's saying that after Hakadosh Dam, then it doesn't make sense that birds are included. Birds also not included. The answer is no. When we say not to eat poultry after Hakadosh Dam, it only means if he eats it roasted, but baked, whatever, but not cooked. If you cook it, shlika means to cook it a long time. So then ophos is acceptable after Hakadosh Dam. So it could be that it is included. It's true. When you want to eat it, don't eat it in a certain way. Eat it in a different way. Don't eat it roasted, eat it cooked. But he sends them to the market to get meat. It could be ophos are included, but dagim are not included because there's no way that you could eat dagim after a cousin's dam. So if we say it's talking about that the person was after letting blood. That's the case here. He says basar. It might mean dagim. It might mean ophos because he might want ophos in order to cook it. It's still edible for him even after a cousin's dam. But dagim is not edible at all because it's not healthy to eat dagim after a cousin's dam. But the regular person on a regular day, if he says basar, it might include dagim also, at least enough that he should ask. And Rabbi Akiva would say it's included in the neder. Abaye Amar kigon dekayvul le'ene. The dagim kashin le'nayim. Abaye says another terrace, another hechatim shah. That his eyes are hurting him, and everybody knows that fish are not good for eyes. So and chicken is, poultry is senachanami. There's no difference between chicken and fish as far as Rabbi Akiva. If someone says meat, he might have meant fish, poultry. He might have meant fish. But if the person who's speaking made a neder, he has an eye, something's wrong with his eyes, so then he surely that did not mean fish, because dagim kosher leinayim. The Gemara says, no, it's not true. Dagim is good for the eyes. Yachi achal dagim. Yachi achal dagim. He would eat fish. Damar Shmuel, nun samachayim. Sounds like a remember from the alphabet. Nun samachayim. Nuna samaleinayim. Nun is a fish. Nun is Aramaic for a fish. Samach is like sama is like a potion, a medicine. Ayin is an eye. Nun samachayim. Nuna samaleinayim. That a fish is a medicine, is a potion, is a remedy for the eyes. So Shmuel says that fish is good for the eyes. And you're saying that fish are not good for the eyes. It's not true. Shmuel said differently. The answer is who is sof ochla. That's only the end of the disease. Ochla is the kind of an eye disease. And at the end, when it's going away already, then it's healthy to eat fish. But usually when someone has something wrong with his eyes, he should not eat fish. And that's the case where someone said, get me meat. And he fully does not mean fish because of this circumstance that his eyes are hurting. And chicken, he would have included at least enough that he should ask for it. End of the sugya, and the end of the daf today. We're not going to go further. Yaakov there especially doesn't want to go further. There shouldn't be 3 daf ahead. So the sugya was 1 point. Really, it was 1 point in the whole sugya. If you say something that is not mamish included, but it's enough that it's at least a question that you can go back and ask the sender, is this also good enough?
Why?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, why were you doing this only in this parak? We could have done this whole idea in the parak before. We had a lot of things.
It's true that they're different. It's the same parak even. Like I'm saying, in other words, it's
But why Mizafka middle? This Nakuda, if you mean to include something that the sender would have, it should be by all the other things also.
I think so. Here I found an example. It could be that before we didn't have. You have yayin and the other subjects. There wasn't that. Here, give an example. But Achanami, this is like one big parak, and I think there's a huge nice more still talking about what's included when you say something. So this was a machlokes. Tanakama says only if it would have been included without a question, but if it's a question, it's not enough to be included. And Rabbi Kiva says at least it's a question, it's enough to be included. But even he says only to be machmir, but it's not chayiv machlokes. Yes, go everybody. Thank you.
Okay, a quarter to then we said what, a quarter to 7 on.
A quarter to 7 was Shabbos.
Maybe some.
And we'll be finishing.
Okay, fine.
We'll be finishing